down the hall from me in college, and then he moved back to Baltimore just like I did, and it was very exciting. And we ran into each other at a bar, and he's been doing a lot of really awesome work around town since he's been back, and he is a truly amazing writer. Please welcome to the stage, Dale Beran.
Thanks, guys. Hi. I want to sit in a little chair. I've been looking at it all night. It kind of epitomizes the act of writing. It's slightly humiliating and slightly cramped. I just saw it up here and I'm like, that chair's for me. Thanks, Lola, for inviting me to do this. I'm really impressed that you found a way to sneak into this church. I tried all the locks. I don't know how you did it. So I wrote a novel called Dates Worse Than Fate, and then I did something really stupid. After I wrote it, I decided to publish it. Because I didn't know that this is sort of the future. We're living in it now, and everything that was legitimate is now illegitimate, and everything that was illegitimate is now legitimate. So it was ridiculous to sort of send it to a publisher. Now it's sitting on the publisher. They're probably, like in modern day Detroit, sleeping on a pile of manuscripts, and mine isn't one of them. But I should have self-published it. When I tell people that you don't know how to use InDesign, you don't know how to find your own books, we're skating on the edge of the apocalypse. The core is about to fall in, and you need to know how to can your own goods and work the earth, and you need to buy your own books. But that's what's happened to it. So I have all these pieces that I read. That's the only time I ever used a novel. But it should come out in about 2 years. So this piece is called Meet Me at the Kaleidoscope. I'd come to Bushwick to see a friend play. There was not a lot of interest in his work. I knew he would never be famous. He wasn't calculating enough. Likewise, he couldn't go on like this, playing to empty rooms. It was a problem, but not mine, so I didn't think too deeply about it. On the way over, I passed my old apartment. For an instant, I was just below the window, but I averted my eyes. The little club was hot. The floor was made of polished plywood, and the walls were covered with junk. Now and again, the junk converged to form a small bar, tables, and chairs, and at the very back, a modest stage. I ordered an ice water. Nothing was happening. No one was on stage. The bartender returned looking slightly annoyed that I wasn't drinking and playing along with whatever was going on there. A gentle breeze came in from the street, and the chandeliers, all 3 of them, were just glass, not crystal, tinkled. Slowly, called by the chime, the room began to fill up with young and beautiful girls. They were all dolls, or rather, dressed like dolls. They wore bangs or thick black glasses or tattoos of vines that crawled along their arms up through their sleeves, and I could only assume over their hearts to take root in their breasts. The stitching on their costumes was oversized and handmade, the seams enormous and sloppy, and the buttons too large like the clothes on a toy. They powdered their faces. The sheer volume put me ill at ease. Was this strange place with its stacks of junks and books? What was it? Was with its kudzu-choked girls with flowers on their chalky lapels? Was I in the doll's house, the valley of the dolls, the uncanny valley, or high up on some remote hill of artistic indulgence? One of them came up to me. She had torn black stockings and looked like a miniature Farrah Fawcett. She asked if I wanted to buy some hash. When I declined, she explained that she was from California, and that it seemed like I was from California too, and so I appreciated good hash. You look like a miniature Farrah Fawcett, I replied. She scrunched up her face with displeasure. Who's that, she asked, as innocent as a doe pretending not to know then, without giving me a chance to respond, disappeared into the forest of bookshelves, looking probably for other people who looked very much like they were from California. The music had started now, a low hum that ebbed and flowed. The lights went out on the silver stage. A big, shining plate emblazoned with old-world charm provided the only illumination. I looked around at the audience and focused in on a girl at the table across from me. It was crowded with her friends whom, judging from the way they moved to arrange her hair or squeeze her shoulder affectionately like you would a little girl, seemed to be enjoying her company. She wore a full-body jumpsuit made out of the drapes that hung above the crib in my earliest childhood memory. On her feet were white Reeboks, which she kicked gaily into the air each time someone said something clever. It didn't seem odd to me at all that she was wearing the drapes from my earliest childhood memory. The entire place was an anachronistic mix of trash and odd, vaguely familiar whimsy. A mistake that happened between the past and the future, or rather, what people discarded from their experience. What seemed odd was that I recognized her face. It was a face on which I had planted numerous kisses, none of which apparently had ever taken root. It was my ex-girlfriend's face. I thought she had moved to LA to become a filmmaker. How could I broach the subject gently, seeing that she was here, now, among us, the lowliest of the low, with all her beauty and talent and merciless ambition? It was then that I saw her elaborate manner of dress wasn't her usual going-out clothes. This would have hinted at some uncharacteristic insecurity. Rather, it was her stage costume. Already the band was warming up. She rose like a column of smoke from a great disaster, if smoke could ever be decorated in Damask, and looked at me proudly. Her lips parched, her mouth and eyes drained of restraint. She mounted the stage, taking her rightful place as lead singer. Her music wasn't all that interesting, and while she sang, I decided to relive the memory which her outfit had evoked. In this, the very first year of my life, I was staring up at the damask drapes when my mother came in to take me out of my crib. We passed a mirror in which I saw my reflection, and then she put me into the sink to take a bath. I had decided this was my earliest memory because I fit so easily into the sink. And indeed, this was what I was thinking in the memory. How neatly, I admired, I fit into this sink. Soap bubbles drifted up from the right and left. Each contained the mysterious blue sky from the window behind me, the dark drapes, and the hazy oil slick of color, yellow, green, and blue, source undetermined. After she finished her set, I went up and spoke with her. She was sitting with the guitarist in the band, someone who was obviously her boyfriend. A wilting scar split his lower lip, deflating his face. His gentle adolescent mouth, divided by the vulnerable scar, told me she was still taking in strays. After a few minutes of conversation, I admitted I was in grad school. Her eyes softened with great compassion. They were surrounded by dark makeup so that she looked a little like a jack-o'-lantern. "Oh, Arthur," she replied, taken by the pity she reserved for artists. "I'm so sorry." The boy with the scar nodded his head in agreement. She offered me some advice. "You must concentrate on putting everything in a bubble," she demanded. I was taken aback by this reference, since it resembled so closely my daydream. Were we speaking in code? And letting your worries surround it, I blurted out, trying to derail the whole conversation. "No, having it surround your worries. Then you must watch them float away and pop." I still don't know what made her say it. Her voice was sugary and sweet. I suppose I just wore it plainly on my face. "Do you need a place to stay?" she asked. In fact, I did. My lease was up in less than a week, and I hadn't made any arrangements to go elsewhere. She took me by the wrist behind the stage to an oak-paneled door. We rose up a narrow set of stairs to the second, then the third floor. "Someone was staying here for a while, who looked just like you," she explained. "So in a way, we always expected you to arrive." The room was cluttered, but I didn't know with what because it was dark. We stood facing one another in the darkness for a moment. Not knowing what to say, I sat down in a chair beside the window. Then, as I looked outside, I was surprised to feel her squeezing my shoulder, milking it of all its tension. I knew a prerequisite to the squeeze was that I was not to turn around as she exited the room. But I wanted to stay forever in this interesting cloud of possibility, to focus my attention elsewhere. I watched two cars roll to a gracious stop. They were nudging each other like curious dogs, urging one another along in the lamplight. I made myself think about these cars. Where were they going? Whom were their occupants? But I couldn't help it. I turned around. She was stuck halfway between the door and the hall, trapped in a little lie that had passed between us. "Where did you get that bolt of cloth?" I asked, nodding at the absolute center of her body. "Somewhere near the navel," but she knew I meant the suit. "Oh, I dug it out of your basement years ago. Do you recognize it?" "No," I answered. The room was quiet and gentle once she had gone. The air was inexplicably fresh. I took everything out of my pockets and lay down on the bed. All of my failures were coming to the fore. Suddenly, the room shifted. A heavy glass wall suspended itself in midair, and shadows were born out of the corners of the room. I should have seen the train rattle by, the filthy, weary J, but we were too high or low. Then it came, a little too late for my interest, threading its way through the half-eaten, bruise-colored purplish buildings, the big, ugly, grease-soaked fossil throwing off blue and yellow sparks. The rock music below was low and distant, more like a rumbling in your body than in the far-off horizon. I wanted then, like all men wanted, some illusion of control. A figure peered in the window across from my window, where the train had been. She wasn't looking out the window, too, just using it as a mirror to fix herself. Warded off by what I couldn't stay, I started toward her, then stopped. Half of her moved, and half of her stayed still. Half of the room's view had disappeared as well, as though it had been replaced by a different place entirely, all the edges lined up like a mix and match game, like the game Exquisite Corpse. Suddenly I saw my friend in the window, the one who I'd come to see. I had forgotten entirely about him. He was playing on stage. The rumbling music was his rumbling music. The edges of his amps fit with the edges of the tall building. "Friend," I said, "you've drawn me into a strange whirlpool." "It looks stranger from the strange stage," she replied, then vanished. Next, I saw Mira. She appeared to me as she was, once so sweet and beautiful. Now, twice as sweet as beautiful. Then the girl in the torn stockings came by too, the miniature Farrah Fawcett. Great art encompasses everything, I figured. It's come to your window just like it's come to 1,000 other windows in the past. Suddenly, a large, translucent bubble surrounded me, glass-like, futuristic, gleaming, and kaleidoscopic. It foundered momentarily on the shoals of my worries, then drifted off, consumed by its all-consuming Brahmanic nature, waiting for sweet, probabilistic release, half concerned about where I was going, and half interested in what I was leaving, half contained in where I was. That's 3 halves, I thought. Yes, well, I said to myself, 1.5 up until this point. You've always been given a little something extra.